Hey everyone, today I'm going to cover my solo PvE build for the Bloodmoon Staff to go solo both group dungeons and statics, and even roads blue chests if you're feeling ballsy. The staff update brings a lot of good new builds, and for those looking to get a PvE build going to build up your fame and build up some silver, this is a good one to get started. This build has incredible sustainability, letting you rock a variety of tiers of gear to be able to do content. Since I tested and learned this on the test server, all the group dungeons were legendary, and so I tested a variety of tiers of dungeons and statics to see what I was able to handle, and I'll break down both tiers and tips on using this build after I go over the gear itself. To get started though, let's talk about the gear. As I mentioned, we're going to start off with talking about gear. Obviously, a very vital part for how this build works. A very similar build to what you probably see with other solo PvE builds, especially compared to like a Battle Axe solo PvE, maybe not as much as a Nature Staff. By the way, this is going to kind of pair you really well, especially for this specific Bloodmoon Staff for soloing content. Obviously, we're going to have the Bloodmoon Staff. I typically will rock the second Q Reality Fissure. I think it's the best for kind of clearing the mobs and getting quick shift charges, as you'll get 500 damage in the first hit. Again, 8.3 gear, keep that in mind. And you'll get, if you hit at least one enemy, you apply one shift. And then you can do a second one that deal 855 or 58 magical damage to all enemies hit. And again, if you hit at least one enemy, you apply 2 shift charges on this to continue the combo. So this is a good way to quickly stack up shift charges and keep it alive as well as deal good damage. The only time I will rock anything other than this, I'm just going to show it again here real fast for those who haven't seen it. That's what it looks like, and then you get the second, just like that. And again, you can see I've gone 3 shift charges off of that now, ready to kind of transform after a quick Q. The only time I'll rock something different other than this Q is against some bosses. I learned running Adapting Matter was the move. For bosses that it was less about me making get a lot of damage out, more just sustaining through their fight with this build. This one worked well for me because if you hit and it hits you and the boss, you'll get that shield. So this helped me kind of stay alive against some matchups I was struggling against in some of the bosses, especially in some of the group dungeons. Kind of allowed me to kind of help keep myself healthy. Another way of basically sustaining my HP, buying time for my cooldowns as I build up shift charges. It's very good in those regards. You get a really big bubble. Now this one applies a shield to myself for 1,144 damage for 1.5 seconds. So usually that'll take in a good few hits from the bosses, kind of keep yourself alive as well as getting a shift charge for yourself. So this is an alternative to the Q if you don't want to run Reality Fissure. These are the two I'd recommend for PvE clear. You could run Pulse Shock. It's not terrible with the cone, but I just found it less consistent than Reality Fissure. That's just personal preference. It's up to you. For W's, I definitely recommend Distortion. It's a good way to do kind of a DOT damage on an enemy. You can place it down. Again, biggest thing is if it's a melee enemy, you want to make sure that you wait for them to come on top of you before you place it. It gets you your shift charges. Each enemy hit applies 1 shift charge up to 2 times, so you can get 2 shift charges. So theoretically, I get the 2 shift charges here, and then I get my 2 Qs down, and I'm at full shift charges. At that point, you can transform and utilize your sustain with the werewolf. And then in terms of passive, I run Altered Beast. They increase my max and current health by 2% for 5 seconds for each shift charge. So again, if I shift charge now, I'm at 3,746 HP. I charge 3621. Again, just keeping my max health great. And then obviously Q and W, you have to use these two. I'll go more into tips on kind of how I pick which Q or which time I'm going to use a Q or W with a shift charge. I'll kind of walk through that later in the video. But that's what the lineup is for the Bloodmoon Staff I like to run. If you don't want the Altered Beasts, there are this one is not bad for solo clearing because you're going to be threat generating anyways against the mobs, and so you're just decreasing their damage for 3%, and it stacks up so you can decrease their damage by 9%. This is a good way if you feel like you're taking a lot of damage to kind of help decrease that. Again, you're going to be taking all the threat generation anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So that's another option in terms of passive. For the hood, we take the Spectre hood because we're going to be trying to, with the Heli jacket, reset it multiple times. So we're going to take Flash of Insight so that we can reset our armor cooldown, keep Heliing up as much as possible for the sustain. And then I run Balance Mind for increase of damage because of this builds up. We're running sustain on the gear, so a little bit increased damage is nice. You can also run, though, Quick Thinker for the cooldown rate. Again, just to try and keep your Hellion and your Flash of Insight as much as possible. As you're clearing, if you feel like you are sustaining perfectly fine, then I'd swap to Balanced Mind for the damage. If you feel like you're struggling with your sustain, swap to Quick Thinker so you have higher cooldown rate. Hellion Jacket, of course, Lifesteal Aura for the same thing. And again, same process here. Balanced Mind if you feel like your sustain is fine, you just need more damage, or swap to Quick Thinker if you need more cooldown. The basic combo with this, a big thing that's important here is that Hellion Jacket stays up when you transform. So I can go here, get my transformation. I can pop Hellion Jacket, and I can swap the werewolf. And then I am not only sustaining from the Hellion Jacket, I'm also sustaining from the Qs. And that's where the core of this build lies, is having your Hellion Jacket active as you're clearing multiple enemies around you, and you're sustaining off the Q in your werewolf form. So that's the big kind of combo right there that's going to keep you alive. And then you can use Spectre Hood to get up again and be able to do the exact same thing when you need to swap. And then you could just Q and keep the sustains up. Do 5 Qs if you want and just have maximized sustain and stay alive as you're fighting mobs. You go through that, transform back, and continue the process, right? That's the basic combo, what you're looking to do as you clear the mobs. And then lastly, Boots of Valor. You can also rock Soldier Boots if you have spec in those. End of the day, I'm just rocking the Healing Sprint as well as Toughness to kind of keep myself alive, have higher defenses, and the Healing Sprint just to help with the HP when I'm in between having these two down. I just need a little boost to kind of keep me up for a second and sustain. If I'm getting low HP and I don't have these up, and I don't have any shift charges, I can pop the heal to kind of just buy myself some time to kite, throw some abilities and be able to swap to werewolf form to kind of keep myself alive for a bit longer. Again, all in the name of just dealing damage and sustaining as I am buying time for my Hellion Jacket to come back up. That's the name of the game with this. If there's other boots you want to rock, if you want to rock Soldier Boots, you can. There are some other alternatives, but I like the healing the most from testing, so I'm sticking with that. And in terms of capes, Demon Cape, I was liking a lot. I think with the sustained focus of this build, having just a bit more damage from the Demon Cape helps a lot with clearing the mobs. However, the Carleon Cape is also really good. Having this on will allow you to spam your Qs a bit more. It can really help you start with a strong start to fighting mobs to instantly just get your Qs out and let you stack up your shift charges really fast. We're going to wait for this cooldown for 8 seconds and kind of show you what I mean. But you can get your cooldowns out really fast with this if that's the route you want to go. So this is what it was going to look like. So had that and then immediately get back up again. And then just like that, I miss targets. But either way, you get what I mean. Get that instant cooldown refresh. Can be able to spam those Qs a lot and get your shift charges up faster. That is also an option. Or if you're worried, you can rock the Undead Cape. That way, if a mob gets you too low, you can reset it. If you're getting attacked, you can escape. A more defensive option if that's the route you want to go. The update also brings out really good stuff to be able to clear mobs. So you can use these acid potions or the hellfire potions as you are clearing just to get a bit more damage out. Weaken their defenses with the acid potion as it's going to decrease damage resistance by 30 for 5 seconds. Or you can just use the hellfire potion to just burn damage. 91 true damage versus mobs every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. It's a good way to kind of help make up for some of the lack of damage I feel that this build was having as I was clearing. Or you can just rock healing potions for the sustain game. Either way, this is the build. I'm going to hop in now and kind of show you some tips and footage and some guides for how to actually utilize this in game. But that's the core equipment that you're going to want as you go in solo group content PvE. Now that you understand the build and some of the basics of the gear, we can cover how to clear. Again, I want to preface that I learned this on the test server. This meant that while using this gear, I had crystal spec or 120 out of 120 spec on all gear pieces, so my IP was inflated. In a way that sort of balances out this buff, however, it should be noted again that all the dungeons I went through were gold, so a 4.4 and a 5.4 group dungeon for instance. However, do keep this in mind as I cover things, that some of the numbers you might have to adjust as you play this on the live server and build up your spec. First, in terms of how good of gear you need, obviously if you're trying to do this as efficiently and quickly as possible, you'll want 8.3 gear. This will provide you the fastest clear, and if you're doing this in yellow zones, then there's no reason not to. But if you're not wanting to risk things, I was able to clear a 4.4 dungeon with a mixture of my 5.3 gear and my 8.3 gear. The 5.3 gear was more than enough to clear the 4.4 dungeon like normal mobs. I just struggled a bit on the bosses with this. So depending on your spec and quality of the dungeon, you should be able to do tier 4 group dungeons with tier 8 equivalent gear, maybe into tier 9 or 10 if needed based on the quality and the mobs you are matched up against, because the types of mobs you face definitely had an impact. When facing mobs in both group dungeons and statics that had a lot of self AoE, it made it hard for me to keep the sustain up. For instance, this Fire Bandit boss was a pain as I was hardly left any room to sustain, so do keep this in mind as you clear and what you are looking at. Beyond that, make sure you pair your Hellion Jacket with your Werewolf transformation to maximize your sustain, and if you're struggling with clearing consistently, I would rock cooldown food as it will help the most with keeping your Hellion Jacket and Spectre hood up more often. Lastly, as a tip, utilize your Q with shift charges more than your W. While the W provides strong damage, you can get a ton of sustain if you focus your Q purely with charges. It'll come down to you knowing your limits on when to focus damage and when to focus sustain. Most bosses I fought, I would gain as many shift charges as I could, and then only use the werewolf Q, then swap back, gain my shift charges, rinse and repeat. While using this with Hellion spam, you can sustain through so much damage. The downside of this build is PvP. This is not a strong PvP build. You can, fight with skill against certain matchups, but if you get caught, you don't have the strongest escape, so keep this in mind. Either way, I hope this video helps you prepare for the upcoming shapeshifting staffs. If you're in need to build up fame with staffs or just want to make some easy PvE money, this build is for you. It is very, very strong, and I felt very confident running it into group content. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more of me playing Albion, follow me at twitch.tv/Redlaf. Until next time, peace out.